Good evening, I'm John Ketch and welcome to the Cold Hard Truth. The news that you won't get anywhere else. As you might be aware, the East Coast lobster fishery is spiraling out of control. Tensions are on the rise, tempers are beginning to flare. Fishers against natives. A page out of the history books being told yet again. But why? Why again? Well, the cold hard truth is that for the last 20 years the Federal Department of Fisheries has failed to uphold its legal responsibility to define a moderate livelihood fishery. The right to a moderate livelihood fishery was granted to natives by the Supreme Court of Canada. The court did not define the right. They decided to let the Department of Fisheries, through consultations with natives, define that right. They have failed in their obligation. Not only have they failed, they have given up. Now rather than define the right, they want to use 10 to 20-year reconciliation agreements. These agreements will be renegotiated forever, leaving commercial fishermen and natives in a never-ending war over access. Natives are angry and rightfully so. The Department of Fisheries has failed. They decided to define their own moderate livelihood fishery. In doing so, they sent their boats out on the ocean to harvest lobster. To spite the federal government, they did so outside the standard rules and regulations by which the commercial fishery operates. They clearly demonstrated that they have no respect for a government that does not respect them. Are their actions justified? Just because they are angry with the federal government, does that give them the right to disregard the law? In disregarding the law, are they not acting like a bunch of thugs throwing a tantrum? Their actions do not hurt the Department of Fisheries. Their actions hurt their neighbors, the non-native fishers who also have families to support, bills to pay, and fishing enterprises to be paid for. Commercial fishermen are angry with natives. They feel that natives are destroying the fishery that they built. Commercial fishers have paid for this modern success story with years of conservation. Natives fishing illegally jeopardize the entire industry. The Marshall decision was very clear: a moderate livelihood fishery is secondary to conservation. Conservation take priority over their rights. However, they are catching lobsters during summer months when there is almost no protection of female lobsters. It should go without saying that females need protecting if you want a future fishery. Apparently, political grandstanding is more important than conservation. Also, fisheries operate at exploitation rates in excess of 90%. Any additional unreported catch can mean disaster because it is not accounted for in management plans. You cannot manage the unknown. In addition, the lobster fishery is certified sustainable. That sustainability has opened new markets around the world, and if this illegal fishery is not stopped, the sustainability certification will almost certainly be lost. Commercial fishers are out there on the water removing illegal native traps. Natives expect DFO and RCMP to stop them. But what can be done? Fishermen are simply upholding the Fisheries Act. The Department of Fisheries has abdicated that responsibility when they made a conscious effort to do nothing. Would they be so bold or foolish to press charges against fisheries upholding the very act that they are supposed to? Do you expect the RCMP to charge fishers for destruction of property? What property? Illegal property? This is a catastrophe waiting to happen, and DFO is doing almost nothing to prevent it. We know that natives have a right to fish for a moderate livelihood. They are fighting for that right. Agree or not with their methods, they feel that they are doing the right thing. It is unfortunate that the war has become native versus non-native when both parties should be taking the fight to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And where is the Department of Fisheries in all of this, you may be wondering? Well, they remain quiet and apparently unable to deal with the conflict. Sure, they are issuing statements of platitudes and idle talk of negotiating with the natives, but they allow an unsanctioned moderate livelihood fishery to continue. In doing so, are they not condoning or accepting the fishery as legitimate? If the Federal Department of Fisheries is unable to enforce the Fisheries Act, then why do we have a federal department at all? They have failed for 20 years to resolve this issue. Why are they still being trusted to solve it now? If the people in the department are unable to accomplish their objectives, one has to wonder if the right people are sitting at the table. But wait, has DFO done nothing? Well, here is another side of the story that mainstream media is not telling. After the Marshall decision, the government gave natives a large sum of money to buy access to the fishery. Consequently, natives accumulated mini licenses over 1,000, and even this year the federal government handed the natives more money and over 300 commercial fishing licenses that were accumulated as a result of the Marshall decision. So, to say that DFO has done nothing is not really fair. DFO granted them access, lots of access. But the natives were acting in bad faith. They took the gift under the guise of a moderate livelihood, and then in many instances they chose to lease those licenses out to non-natives to fish. Meanwhile, their own band members are still shut out of the fishery and unable to earn a moderate livelihood. If the natives are truly interested in a moderate livelihood for TR people, should they not support their own first? Should they not give priority access to their members? How can they lease out the access that was given to them, and at the same time demand more access for a moderate livelihood fishery? Is that not the definition of hypocrisy? If natives want more access, do they not have an obligation to demonstrate a need? If after all available licenses are being used, and more are still needed, then go back to the negotiating table. However, if they continue demanding more access, and each time it is granted a lease that access to non-natives, where does it stop? Does it stop when natives own 100% of the fishery and all non-native fishery work for natives? Is that fair? Is that our goal? The Canadian public must put pressure on the federal government. That pressure should not be to simply make concessions to natives to prevent a war on the water. The federal government must demand accountability from natives. They need to determine which licenses are being actively fished. Of those, they must determine if they are being fished by natives or non-natives. This must be reported back to the Canadian public. Once that information is known, the government must then decide what a moderate livelihood fishery is. I would assume that moderate should be the average Canadian income of $52,000 a year, but natives do not pay income tax. Moderate for a native would be less when adjusted for taxes and other benefits. Once these things are known, negotiations can begin. But to simply dole out licenses when there are already over 1,000 not being used or are being leased to non-natives would be a disservice to Canadians and a misuse of a resource that belongs to all Canadians. Hopefully this issue finds an amicable resolution. Until it does, stay tuned for updates. That's all for tonight. See you next time.